Welcome to What's Your Point Overtime, where our panelists continue to call it like they see it. I want to start with a topic that broke on Friday. Shout out to Aubrey Taylor. He identified that the vendor involved with Lena Gate, i.e., the $11 million COVID communication contract that was canceled and is at the center of the three indictments of the Hidalgo Inner Circle. That Felicity Perea, 1 month after getting the contract, bought a $375,000 home. The term burning a hole in her pocket comes to mind. Any thoughts on this? I'm going to start with you, Gary Polland.
Well, the additional revelation, of course, is that she also is a donor to Judge Cornelio, who has the case of the three indicted Lina Hidalgo staffers. So it looks kind of fishy. He also revealed she was on a trip with her significant other in Spain and Portugal. So she was doing really pretty good. I guess that may be an explanation of what happened to the rest of the money that the county says they're trying to claw back but haven't. But I think, and she also looked, by the way, really relaxed on her vacation. So it appears to me that she's probably cooperating with the district attorney's office. And I think that spells
businessman and columnist Bill King, you've even looked in and confirmed some of this.
Yeah, when I saw Aubrey's story, which, by the way, I'm glad you gave him a shout out on, because he is a real hound dog when it comes to these things out. He did a lot of great research here, and it appears that she bought the house for, I think, $349,000 sometime in the first part of 21. I don't know exactly when, but the contract was awarded, I think, in February or something like that. And so it sure looks like the timing lines up. She and her significant other are shown as the owners of the property on the tax roll. They've already gotten an increase in the value, by the way, from what they paid to 375, which I think everybody can probably identify with that. So I don't know. I mean, we can't track through the vaccine money went to this, but the timing sure is suspicious. And kudos to Aubrey for figuring this one out.
Yeah, Sue, we showed enough pictures of that kind of sketchy apartment where she was supposedly running this outfit out of. What do you make of her venture into home ownership? So close to getting the deal of a lifetime.
Well, it certainly looks suspicious, but you don't know. I mean, it's not against the law to buy a home. She's got a home. I think you have to look at how it lines up with the timeline as the contract went through, and then what was her fee schedule in the contract, and then why did she get paid such a large amount of money when they never really delivered any goods to on the contract. So, I think when you get to look at the contract and the stuff that's in the contract, I think we'll know a lot more. But, it certainly looks suspicious. And, maybe there is a deal. She doesn't have to pay back the money.
Woo! Holly Hansen. I know this got your antenna stimulated, and you've broken enough elements of this story. It got us talking. Do you think it's going to get folks on Commissioner's Court talking as well?
I think so too. And I'd have to go back and check. I want to check my notes on that. But I think that the timeline is very important. The discussion started in January of 2021. And I think the request for a proposal went out in February, but I think even in March and April, there's communications going back and forth about the scoring and what happened there. And it wasn't officially awarded until the summertime was when Commissioner's Court voted to approve the contract without much knowledge about the vendor and what had gone on behind the scenes, of course. And then it really didn't come into the public eye. We first noticed it in August. And that timeline is really interesting. And I think Sue's right. We should take a look at the terms of the contract and when she got payments and how much at each installment. But there does seem to be a lot of confidence from her in her financial situation, at least last February.
Well, let's not forget that the county purchasing office waived a bunch of rules for her, financial fitness rules, so she could actually accept this contract. I mean, she
On
didn't have,
request of the individuals who have now been indicted. Let's note that too. So there's, those initial emails we saw going back and forth were asking Dopsloff to adjust those requirements for bidding on the project.
my grandfather said not having two nickels to rub together was kind of her status. Cynthia, what?
Well, if a duck quack, then the duck quacks here. But the more that folks investigate this spider web is just spinning more and more larger. It's interesting, though. It's very questionable if she bought this home cash when she was living in a very small apartment. That's very suspicious. But the other piece of it was her significant other is known as being a handyman. I know many handyman that folks around, my cousins and stuff that fix homes and stuff, and they cannot afford a home of this price. So it definitely raises a cloud of suspicion, and it needs to be investigated.
Sue, I want to ask you about the clear fissure, the split in the Democratic Party. You have folks like Kim Ogg, John Whitmire, standing up and saying, we cannot have this brand of leadership anymore. What's going on in terms of the dynamics here?
Well, I mean, they're standing up because they're for justice. They're for things being done the fair way. They don't stand up for, for criminal activity. And I want to say something. Maybe she was living in that apartment, very small apartment, because she was saving money to buy a home. I think we have to be really careful here not to jump out and say you lived in a little apartment and now you bought a house. Could have been living there because I was saving money along the way to be able to buy a home. So I think we have to be careful. I think we have to look at the contract, the terms of the contract. But yes, within the party, there are people talking about first, standing up against this kind of corruption that's going on, standing up about, it seems to be a lot of cronyism now down at the county. It seems that if you're a good friend of somebody, you have a job, even though you're not qualified to do the job. It's called, total disruption in county services, which is something we're not really used to. We're used to county delivering services on a really good level. And there's all that. So yeah, there's a lot within the party that a lot of discussion about this going on.
If somehow the progressive wing of the party, put it mildly, inexplicably prevails in this, I know this guy who's running this new party in Texas who would welcome all of those moderates in the Democratic Party.
Right.
Anyway.
Can I say there's a shift too? If you look at the primary, the Democratic primary, there's a very definite shift in the primary as to who the people were that won. This was one of those elections where there was a shift that took place. There's a whole shift taking place. So there's a lot going on within the Democratic Party.
All right. Burning Desire, who wanted to say something during our regular broadcast show, prepared for it and didn't get to say it. I want to make sure that happens here. Raise your hand. Go ahead, Sergio.
Okay. On the bail bond measure that passed in Harris County, there's two issues that were not, there are two components. One of the attorneys added an amendment that the bail bond minimum 10% is for serious felonies, serious offenses. There was domestic abuse, just some serious issue. It had nothing to do with misdemeanors and those issues. So that was one thing that was included in the bail reform measure. The other piece is that the law enforcement, the police unions, all these folks were in support of this measure. Could you imagine the officers, arresting someone in very dangerous, precarious situations, and then the folks get out and then they have to rearrest these folks again because of the revolving door and the low amount of bail that these folks are on. And the other issue is the backlog of these cases, felony cases. I believe there's 50,000. It's going to take up to 5 years for these cases to come to trial or some sort of plea bargain. And, those are the issues that need to be discussed. That's the next step is, unclogging this backlog of felony cases so we can provide some relief, some justice for these families.
Yeah, I mean, look,
Mhm.
Senator John Whitmire wasn't the first, but he's been the loudest. Why aren't we having night court? Why aren't we having weekend court? I mean, if these guys are truly public servants, and Gary, you may be able to answer that.
Well, the short answer is this: we don't have room for more judges. That also costs money. The prosecutor's office. Remember, Kim Ogg has been asking for 3+ years for help with her office. I mean, the average caseload is 700 in felony court, which is an impossible caseload. And finally, she got some relief 2 weeks ago. Finally. So then people are mad about backlog. They can't, you only try one case at a time. But here's the other problem we don't talk about. The other problem is that the private bar that does criminal defense work has greatly reduced since COVID because not much was happening during that time. It was hard to stay in business, and a lot of people who were close to retirement decided to move on down the road. It is so tight that they have a list, and you get on a list, you have to qualify, and the list rotates. They call it the wheel. So the way the wheel's working now for attorneys who can handle first-degree felonies, the number is about 35 lawyers in private practice who are on this list. That's it. So if you're a lawyer and you sign up for cases, you will get cases every week you sign up. And of course, at some point, you're going to have so many cases you can't give them justice, so you go off the wheel. So that's a problem too. This was created also because of the rapid expansion of the public defender's office without any concern of what happens to the private bar, which still is important in the factor. So we got all kinds of complications. That, and then you have no police, Sergio. We had the sheriff's union last week tell us that average number of deputies on patrol during primetime hours in Harris County unincorporated areas is about 59 officers. The numbers are a joke. And there was an opportunity. The county had oodles of money, yet Lina Hidalgo and her allies wanted to defund the constables from law enforcement, have not given the sheriff's office the deputies they need to patrol or to control the jail. And now they're coming out and telling us how anti-crime they are. It's garbage. They had the money. They wasted it. Maybe that 17 million for the hospital at Reliant that never had any patients could have been used in law enforcement. That would help. So that's the big problem. And if you don't change the leadership at the top of this county, I got bad news for you. The crime problem is not getting better.
I
I want to bring Sue Lovell in here. Sue, you had an issue you wanted to talk about?
Well, it was related to this. So it was great to see such a united front on the bail bond, the 10%. We'll see if they'll work. To me, the priorities are wrong. Standing up on what they call fair bail bond is impacts some people, but the people that are waiting to be able to go to court to either clear their name, because everybody that's waiting to get through, they're not all guilty. It puts all those families on hold, all those people's lives on hold. And it's really, truly unfair someone who has been arrested not to be able to get to court and either clear their name or move forward with the consequences that are going to happen. So I'd like to see how the people that went down on bail bond go back in and say, fund the DA's office, fund the judges, have 24-hour docket, whatever you need to do for a plan, bring it back and let's fund it and let's move this forward.
Hey, I want to talk about something real quick because Sergio piqued my interest. There are two constituencies I see in the state of Texas that are linchpin. Suburban women, they vote, they're the king and queen makers, and Hispanics. Sergio, you seem to allude to the fact you thought that the base is largely Democrat when it comes to urban Latinos or in the greater Houston area. Do you see any shift there? Because we're seeing it elsewhere, and it's really going to, I think, be a huge factor moving forward.
I think the shift is there. And what's happening is that in the urban areas of our city, in the inner city, where the area is being gentrified and the crime rate is going high for those displaced folks that are being displaced due to gentrification, these folks are no longer tolerating the the crime in our areas, and what they're doing, they're moving to the suburban areas. So therefore, the voting power, the voting strength is becoming less and less. And when they go to the suburban areas, of course, there's a broader base of different political parties, and therefore there's perhaps even moving towards another moderate or more or Republican Party once they get to the suburban areas. But that solid Democratic base is eroding, not only in terms of numbers, in terms of the voting folks that are in that area, but they're also moving out and then it dilutes the vote. So it's happening, but I don't know at what percentage, but it's definitely very evident.
All right, Holly Hansen, I think of you and the volume of reporting you're doing. You're like the Matrix, that guy that just keeps splitting off. What are you covering out there? Something that you want to tell our viewers this morning?
Well, obviously Harris County and what's happening there, the crime issue, a little bit of Houston. I wish I could sit inside Sioux Level and Bill King's brains for a little while and learn from all the policy history that they have. But just trying to keep up with what's happening in Harris County. And I do think it is significant that, you do have these voices that were in opposition to bail reform policies at the legislative level last year, but were down there at the bail bond hearing. So obviously crime is an issue that's having an impact on all of these elected leaders, and they're starting to hear those voices. Yes, I agree with you, Sue. That was an interesting moment at the bail bond board hearing where you had all these voices coming together. It reminds me of what we saw, I think it was in 2020, where they were talking about getting rid of the contract program for the constables. And you had just this outpouring of bipartisan groups coming forward and saying, whoa, wait a minute, we don't want this. We like our constables. We want the law enforcement in the community. And let's not forget that, the county rejected, 82% of the budget request from law enforcement this year. And, they're just not giving them the resources that they need to patrol these streets. And you see these little temporary programs. The one, they had a big press conference about, we're going to give, $2.5 million for overtime for sheriff's deputies who say off the record that they're already overstretched and they don't have enough people to answer the phones. They don't have enough people to run these calls. I forget which of you mentioned the statistic that the deputies organization shared last week or the week before about how few deputies they have to run these calls on a daily basis when they got $1.5 million last year. So, these are really prominent issues. I do also like to look at some of the issues that are, less sexy, if you will. There's a lawsuit right now pending in federal court against the University of Houston over free speech issues. And that's something that's super interesting to me. I know, again, it's not, your headline news, but when you're talking about higher education and freedom in academics, I think it's really important to look at what some of these, especially these publicly funded universities are doing in regards to allowing students to express their views, whether or not they're controversial.
Gary, you edit an influential newsletter and you get a lot of feedback from your readers. A couple of questions. What are they saying? And number two, are they energized to overcome what may be, a numerical disadvantage Harris County wide to make that up with just high turnout in the fall? Are they energized?
I think they're energized, and I think they're motivated because they understand that the Harris County is at the breaking point. And if we don't replace the inept leadership we have now, then Harris County is on the way to becoming the next Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, just not livable. So as Sergio correctly pointed out, people are leaving. That's why Houston's population is in decline, because people are leaving and fleeing crime, infrastructure, and ineptitude. So people realize if they want to save this county, they're going to have to step up. And so I think that that's what's going to happen. I think go into the fall, the Democrats are not going to be excited. They got a president they don't like. They got unpopular policies. We have runaway inflation. We have an open border, and we have runaway crime. And other than that, Biden's doing a great job. That will end up hurting the Democrats, and it's turnout that matters. And I believe that even though I think Harris County is a lean blue county, I believe enough people realize we're not going to get a hold of this crime problem until we replace the people on Commissioner's Court we can replace, which in this case is Lina Hidalgo and Adrian Garcia, the two that need to be replaced. There would be a breath of fresh air for this county with new conservative pro-law enforcement leadership. And I put John Whitmire in there. He's pro-law enforcement. He's a leader that can get things done. He's a Democrat. So it doesn't matter about party. It's about either you're pro-crime or anti-crime. And the problem is that the county judge came to us from New York or Los Angeles or California, whatever values she has, her values reflect those states. She was a much better candidate to run there because she more reflects what they believe in. She is out of touch with Harris County. The people know it. They know she's the problem. And they don't care how many times she tells us she's, quote, anti-crime. And we're spending money to do this because they know by her actions she's not. And so replacing her, replacing Adrian Garcia with positive improvements who will support law enforcement, support the district attorney. I happen to know the district attorney's office has a wish list of what they need in order to get rid of this backlog. But she hadn't bothered to even go and talk to the commissioners about it because they turned her down every other time up till now. So, and God bless Kim Ogg for doing the things she's doing and working so hard as she is to trying to get public safety back in our community. But I think this election in the fall is a watershed. And I think that the change in leadership will result in a significantly positive improvement for our community.
All right, Sue, I see you want to talk. Hold on. But if I had $1 for every one of Bill King's columns that I've read, then I'd be way better off. But Bill, what are you writing about this week?
You can buy a new house.
I may be writing about that topic. I actually, while y'all been talking about doing a little research here, I finally found her record on the internet.
Supposed to be Perea.
So yeah, Perea bought the house in September the 10th of 2021. I'm not exactly sure how that lines up with the contract timeline. Holly, do you?
Oh, like 10
Yeah,
days.
so that would be after, it was already in operation.
July, wasn't it? Did the contract was?
It was approved, I believe, in July of 2021.
Yeah, I agree.
And then really didn't hit the public until August. So, yeah, that's interesting timing.
So she also took out a $270,000 mortgage, which means she would have made about $100,000 down payment on the property. So interesting little pieces sort of falling into place here,
Right, yeah.
I also
I
wonder,
don't think you see the contract and the terms. What you know.
The other big thing, that I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Greg, but we talked a little bit, I think, a couple of weeks ago about the issue with the computer system that went down. And that has sort of exposed another issue within the county since Hidalgo took over with all this change in county administration. I was reading something about, 16 department heads being replaced since she took over, and it was a brain drain.
A bunch of lower level people like George Hammerline and Ed Johnson leaving the election division, who were real pro running that,
Right.
And now we've got this. And by the way, the person that quit is still running the election process.
Yeah, that's the quitting that's not quitting. But the other point you said about the county and county government, the other thing that's part of Lina Hidalgo's agenda, and she's getting cooperation from Adrian and Rodney, is replacing elected officials with appointed officials they control, taking responsibilities away from the county clerk, from the tax assessor collector, from the commissioner's court, because they appointed some county executive to help them do stuff. That's a pattern over and over again. And by the way, and they have a criminal justice coordinator they hired for what I have no idea. They hired, they created this MAC system, which is a system to supervise appointed lawyers. I mean, just wasted money left and right. They've gone through, I think, $500 million, $750 million of federal and our rainy day fund money just flushed down the toilet. And what happens when you have all these appointed people? There's no accountability to anybody. So that's part of the election coming in the fall. We want to bring back accountability for county government. We want elected officials who are responsible for doing their job and not being able to hide behind appointments.
There was a purge when they came in. It's there. You can see it. Gary, I want to say something. A lot of people moved to Houston from other states And I think they bring good values with them. I don't think that really matters. I think the most significant thing is going to be in the election is there's no more straight ticket voting. And I think that's going to make people have to go down the ballot and make decisions rather than just hitting one button and voting for a party. And I think that will be the most significant thing that will change politics in the county this year, given everything that's going on. Again, Hidalgo ran for office because she wanted to make a change. She went over to the party and they said, hey, why don't you run for county judge? That's exactly what happened. She wanted to run for state rep. No, don't run there. Run for county judge. We need someone to run there. And she ran. And wow, well, I don't think they even thought that she would win, but she did. The thing now is you've been there 4 years. You should know now in 4 years how to do this job and how to do things the right way. And there were plenty of people that reached out to her and said, we would love to help you. And she reached out to, her fellow commissioners.
Let me ask
Hey, everybody, I want to get to Bill on an issue that we talked about. And by the way, I talked to these people. I think I talked to Holly 4 times this week. I talked to Lisa 5 times. I talked to Terry 6 times. Talked to Bill, twice a day sometimes. It's crazy. I bug them all the time. Said, you're next. But Bill, you were considering writing about the skyrocketing appraisals that people are dealing with in their homes and the massive increases in their property tax. What have you found out?
Yeah, it's really stunning the appraisal increases you're seeing right now, and this is going to be, I think, the other big issue, Gary, in the November election, because people's tax bills are going to start coming out, and they're going to be fighting these taxes. But you're talking about 10, 20, 30% increases in some cases, and if you recall, this commissioner's court was going to increase property taxes by 8%,
until they were stopped by Cagle and Ramsey.
Cagle walked out of the meeting or boycotted the meeting. And so can you imagine what the bills would be at this point in time? Now, some of that will be ameliorated by the fact that they've got the statewide cap that they've got to deal with. And so I suspect you're going to see some pretty substantial property tax rate decreases because of the cap that was put in place. And, that at the time, it didn't look like that was really much of property tax relief. I suspect it's going to look a lot more like that now. And I think you'll see, Abbott bragging about that in the November election. And, look, I just don't, right now at SAM, I'm recruiting about twice as many former Democrats as I am former Republicans. And it's just because the Democrats that are moderate Democrats, there's just nothing there to believe in. There's just nothing to believe in anymore. And increasingly, if you don't fit a particular demographic background, you're scorned. I've had one long, a very well-known Democrat that y'all don't know the name of, who said, I was told I shouldn't run for something because I'm an old white guy, and he was just offended by that, and by the way, incredibly racist and ageist, not on top of everything else. But I just don't see what the appeal to the Democratic Party is right now. And I think that's what is reflected in their numbers. But, most of the people that are coming to SAM can't imagine voting for a Donald Trump again, and so they're looking for an alternative. And then we've got a lot of moderate Republicans who had already left the party over Trump. And so, look, I think that in George Friedman's book, The Storm Before the Calm, he predicts that the 2020 is going to be this tumultuous, political and social upheaval that's then going to give way to a period of extended prosperity and things sort of settling down the civil basis. And he said one of the things that's going to be dealt with in that period is the dysfunction of the duopoly of these two parties not being able to run the country, which they clearly can't. And so I don't know what that resolution is going to look like. I don't know whether that's going to be us in there or other people or some kind of completely different sort of system that we've got now. But it's clear to me that what we're doing right now is not working. Neither party can put forth a consistent philosophy of governance because they are slaves to their primary bases. And the primary bases are not offering solutions. They're offering ideological talking points.
Let me just add, I mean, why are we surprised by this? I mean, some folks are just feeling hopeless. This is nothing new. When the prices were staggering in the heights, and now we have developers coming into our inner cities and displacing a lot of poor folks, and the appraisal, of each home is going skyrocketing, pushing more poor folks more further back arbitrarily. This is not new. This happened in the Gallery area, Memorial area, Heights area. Now it's affecting more inner city area. This is not new. You appraise these houses where it just drives poor people out, and the folks, the Democrats in inner city that are being subjected to these high prices feel helpless. How do we take on the big developers? How do we fight back these folks who contribute to campaign contributions? How do we fight these folks who contribute to political campaigns that are in the commissioner's court that support? You try to go and fight in, you need to get a lawyer like Gary or Bill Keene or someone to stand up and fight for you, at the appraisal district with Ann Bennett. But we feel powerless to fight these developers because they are so wealthy and very powerful.
And it's increasingly, I mean, it's Democratic elected local officials that are letting all the stuff happen that Sergio is talking about. That's why they're so.
Right, nobody's paying attention to the amount of apartments that are being built in the city in the East End on Middle Street, 100 units. Replacement of Clayton homes on contaminated property. Nobody, and it is. You look through the housing, there is so much going on behind the scenes that's going in, and the neighbors are kind of defenseless, but they need to get out.
That's related. Also related to our tax system with property tax. So what happens, Sergio and Sue, if someone comes into your neighborhood and you live in a modest home, and they tear down the house and they build some really fancy 3-story thing that's getting built like in Houston all over the place, and suddenly the house, your land that was worth $50,000 because of them now is now worth $250,000. So your house doesn't change, but your land value goes up. And this is one of the wisdoms of in California when they passed the proposition to control property taxes and limit them to basically what you paid plus, I guess, some small factor for inflation. That made sense because that way the poor weren't shoved out. Otherwise, the system we have now, Sergio, it's going to accelerate. It's going to get worse. Absolutely. And in the idea we own your house in Texas is actually pretty much a joke. You get the privilege of paying money to the government and the county, city, school districts, so you can remain in your home. That's what our system is.
Gary, you got to factor in 100, and it's up to 105 apartment complexes, PFCs that are done. They're run through the Houston Housing Authority, no bid. It's a deal with the developers, and their margin of profit is those developments roll off the tax rolls forever. 105 all through the city, off the tax rolls.
And that's another problem.
Our buddy
Wayne
Vilchefino has done a bunch of investigation on that. We need to probably pay attention to it. But what I want to, and believe me, my bosses at Fox 26 would love for you guys to stay on all day because this is high quality content. And there,
it's time for breakfast.
I'm hungry.
Okay. Last thing, I want you to put your hand here and you listen to the ticking time bomb at the Texas Supreme Court, where there are 2 firefighter cases that eventually that bomb's going to go off, and the city is going to be left with hundreds of millions of dollars in liabilities, and they don't have the money to pay it. I mean, Sue, what's going on there? I know you talked to the folks with Marty and the firefighters.
The Supreme Court, I believe I heard the Supreme Court had asked for the brief. So they're at the end of this right now. They're at the end of all the objections and all the legal stuff. We're right at the end of, when are they gonna decide? And it'll be probably Prop B that the decision is made. Because remember, there's the collective bargaining where the mayor went and said collective bargaining was unconstitutional. That's still there too. So there's 2 separate cases that are going to have ramifications for the city, only because this mayor wouldn't sit down and do arbitration. But you know why he wouldn't? Because arbitration under law Collective bargaining says the city must bring their financial books to the table and open them up for everybody to see. That's exactly why we're in this position. The mayor was not bringing the books to the table.
Well, but Sue, also the mayor he considered the fire union to be a political enemy. I expect, Greg, the Supreme Court will rule.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Supreme Court will rule after the election. I think they look for a ruling in November or December.
Wait a second. There's two sets of books at the city of Houston. I thought we had been balancing our budget.
Yeah.
He says with sarcasm.
Whatever.
That's funny.
All right, you guys. Hey, I
guess that's the thing. We're going to see.
Oh, wow. Hey, guys, let me break in for a second.
Well,
I'm doing research while you're sitting here. So Perea closed on her house on September the 10th, 2021. Her first payment from the county and the amount of $539,000 was made on September 8th.
Well, timing's everything, Bill.
And on top of that, so they also announced on September the 8th, Hidalgo announced on September 8th that they were going to cancel the contract.
Right.
And they made all of her payments they made 3 payments.
Let's
see.
Before they started it down.
They made that payment.
Well, Perea made payments. She got her payments subsequent to the cancellation.
Yeah,
breaking news on overtime.
Wow.
Listen to me for a second. They made that payment, the first payment they made on the day that Hidalgo said she was canceling the contract. The next payment they made 1 week later. So the first one was $539,000. The second was $885,000.
Yeah.
The second payment was made after she'd already announced she was going to cancel the contract.
Wow.
Yeah,
but
this
whose
is kind of,
money is that? Is that her fee? Is that her fee she gets for administrating this contract?
That is the check.
Whose money is that?
That was the check that the county wrote. Those are the 2 checks that the county wrote.
well, Bill, that's like the election administrator was resigned and she's no longer here. But these people never disappear. The money always changes hands. Again, Sergio, find yourself a new Hispanic candidate for county judge.
No, let me just say, we're missing another component here, and that's all related. This web is just spinning larger and larger. And I believe Sue talked about cronyism and nepotism, and that's been going on in city government in Harris County forever and ever, but I yet to see any case dealing with nepotism. I mean, they just got to throw that law out of the books because I don't, cronyism,
that's true.
But nepotism,
yeah, that's probably right.
I have not ever seen a high-profile case on nepotism, even though we all know it happens, but we have never seen it being actually enforced. Second of all, hold on. The Judge Cornelio situation that ties into all of this. It's interesting to see that she received $100 from Pelea and also $1,000 from Lina Hidalgo's counsel, Catherine Cross. And that's interesting to see that. That's not unusual because, lawyers, get to campaign contribution. $100 is not a lot. But what's really interesting is that Commissioner Rodney Ellis, what was his impact in supporting and funding these campaigns for Judge Cornelio?
Oh.
All of that is very interesting.
He targeted her opponent. She was his legal counsel. The conflicts are everywhere.
Well, I think that
she's smart enough to figure that out.
She's a wonderful judge, but she should recluse herself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree, Sergio.
All right, everybody. Hey,
have a good week.
Have a wonderful Easter, wonderful Passover.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. And I think this is really value added for our viewers. So we'll see
we had scoops
all very soon. Thanks for joining us on WYP Overtime, where it really goes.
Easter, everybody. I'm going to Schlitterbomb. Bye-bye.
Have fun.
I'm going to the kitty section. Bye-bye.
Bye.